We are just 2 days away from the end of the NFL draft, and today we've collected a number of loyal followers of ours, people from Twitter, and we're going to do a 4-round Superflex Dynasty rookie mock with half tight end premium settings. Going to be a lot of fun. This should be a real life kind of example of what ADP is going to materialize into. I know over on our site, Mason actually collected some live stream ADP from the domain guys, from himself, and from the land guys as well. So if you guys want an idea, better than, let's say, Keep Trade Cut or your favorite creators' rankings, like maybe our rankings or whatever, what ADP is shaping out to be, because that's a really important distinction to have as well. You can definitely check out our site for that. But this one should be fun. Just randomize the draft order. Unfortunately, Danny and I are going to be picking from the end of the first round. But you know what? That's maybe where the analysis needs to come in anyways, because early on in the first round, I think we might know who should be going there and that kind of thing. So this might be a little bit more interesting. We got this 1.5 minute clocks. Nobody get fired. Nobody auto pick.
It's easy for us to pick second overall and show the world that that is the rightful spot for one Travis Hunter, but we'll see if the community is on the same page there. Does Travis Hunter maybe fall a little bit? I saw a couple of you guys comment. He actually does go 102 here, by the way, MW McLean, in the recent startup that we've had. We've had some comments on the rookie rankings that we put out on Sunday. A lot of people were like, well, Travis Hunter isn't as good as BTJ, or Travis Hunter wasn't even the best receiver in his conference. I saw a comment on, and I'm like, Are people actually going to fade Travis Hunter in a lot of your guys' leagues? Comment down below if that's going to be the case.
I put out a tweet today saying, I'm willing to take Travis Hunter 102, but if you don't have to, then don't. Trade down to 103, 104, 105. If you know Hunter isn't going to go as high as 102 in your league, that's obviously great. And first 6 picks so far, we see it go relatively chalk, I would say. Ashton, jeanty 101. Hunter for us is the 102. Maybe in other rooms, he'll go 1-3 to 1-5, I would say. Hampton, probably the 102 in most people's rooms. We do see Tyler Warren come off the board at 107, which is a little higher than I'm willing to take him personally, but I do understand why people would take him that high. Cam Ward goes 105. I have him ranked 106 behind Henderson, but I think it's totally cool if you had a roster needing a quarterback. And then McMillan and Henderson kind of go where we expect.
So yeah, even though I personally wouldn't have him at 7, I actually do have my tier 3 of rookies being Emeka Egbuka, Quinshon Judkins, and the 2 tight ends. So Tyler Warren is technically my 10, but I do have him in a tier with 4 guys here that would make him worth the 1-7. Specifically, again, tight end premium. Let's just say in a hypothetical scenario, you needed a tight end and you wanted one of him or Loveland. I think that's a fine spot there, although I personally wouldn't be able to do it over Egbuka.
Yeah, and that's why we do tiered rankings, right? The point of tiers is, if you're in a tier with Egbuka and with Judkins and the other tight end, Colston Loveland, then you could take him as high as the top of the tier or as low as the bottom of the tier. And it would depend, because obviously you're going to have the context of a dynasty roster that you're dealing with, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end. You know exactly what your needs are necessarily. And we don't want to reach outside of those tiers for needs. But if you have a need at tight end and you're picking 109 or whatever, then it makes sense.
This is about as FSC room as you can get, because 9 of my top 10 players have gone off the board, and my 9th overall player is the one that makes it back to me at 10 here with Colston Loveland. Again, personal preference thing. If you prefer Warren, I think that's fine. I do have Loveland slightly higher, but at the end of the day, if you need somebody maybe for a year 1 projection, Tyler Warren may be less hurdles versus the level of competition in terms of targets that Colston Loveland might have in year 1.
Yeah. And again, if you didn't need a tight end there and you wanted to go, like I personally have Matthew Golden in a tier with the 2 tight ends. I have Egbuka and Judkins in a mini tier by themselves. I think it's okay if you really needed to, heavy tight end premium, you wanted to take those tight ends over one of Egbuka or Judkins. I just personally can't do it in most of the half tight end premium settings that I play in. For me, it would be a decision point between Golden, Loveland, and Warren, and maybe Dart. If you really, really needed a quarterback, I think you could get me there on Dart potentially, who goes ahead of my pick, which I think 111, 112 is probably about the highest you're going to see him. I can't imagine people are going to be reaching, 107 or something to take Jackson Dart just because he's a quarterback. Maybe in other years that might have happened, but I think people recognize he was a pretty weak first rounder, relatively speaking. Matthew Golden is actually my 9th overall player. So the fact that I got him there at 112 is pretty solid. I detailed why in the wide receivers to target and avoid video yesterday that I'm comfortable taking Matthew Golden this high. It's essentially just that I think he's this year's Ladd McConkey, where you have to apply the context to his profile. You have to apply that he was the go-to guy for Texas last year. And you also have to recognize that he landed in a very good spot, a top 25 pick, Jordan Love throwing him the ball, no clear number 1 in that offense.
Adding to that, a lot of people aren't even convinced that this is a very good landing spot. Let's make the case for why it is. The Packers, people will always say, well, they have already 3 wide receivers on the roster, and now it's just a headache because we don't know who's going to get all the volume on a week-to-week basis. I think the most telling part is, despite having 3 wide receivers that people are comfortable with, the Packers went out there at 23rd overall, added Matthew Golden, a guy that I thought looked like a Stephon Diggs light. Again, he has to improve in terms of the physicality of his game, I'll say. But in terms of the smoothness, in terms of the fluidity, 3-level ability at the catch point as well, I thought was underrated given his frame. I thought Matthew Golden was worth a late first-round pick. The Packers obviously take him there, and he has the opportunity to be the number one in that offense, and an offense that we saw once they get that ground game going, play action shots with Jordan Love. Matthew Golden is the type of wide receiver that can win deep. Imagine the utility that we saw from Christian Watson, except a much more reliable player that can also impact all over the field rather than just impacting that deep third.
Yeah, and the last thing on Golden, then we can wrap up some of these other picks here, is the Packers did have the 30th most pass attempts in the league last year. So that is one concern you might have with Golden going to Green Bay, is that they're not a very pass-heavy offense. But they were the 8th highest scoring unit in the league. So they are going to put points on the board.
With Love hurt.
If it is. Yeah, exactly. With Jordan Love hurt for 3-4 games or whatever he missed last year. The first couple picks of the second round go, I think, as expected. I mean, Luther Burden for me is my 201 at this point. I did have him a little bit lower than that post-draft, but I have since moved him up to 201. I have him over RJ Harvey, but I would have taken Caleb Johnson over him. That would have been the only guy that I would have went differently. RJ Harvey, I think this is about the range that he should be going. I've seen him in some of the mocks that Domain guys had done, Land guys had done, Mason had done, that Harvey did go as high as, I believe, 109 in one of those drafts, which to me, I think is just a little bit too early. I get the landing spot's great, and he's a solid prospect going to an offense that needed a running back really badly. But Harvey, to me, belongs in the early second round.
For better or worse, would you have taken 2022 rookie James Cook at the 109? And in some leagues, people were able to do that. For me personally, I was always on the table of I would have needed James Cook at that early portion of the second. And that's kind of how I view RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey, comparably a little bit older of a prospect, but incredibly elusive, incredibly efficient, has a 3-down profile. And if he ends up giving you James Cook utility, I think you're perfectly comfortable spending a 1-2 turn pick regardless. Again, 109, a little rich for my blood, especially given the top 10, top 15 overall tight ends, especially given the first round overall wide receiver. But I think RJ Harvey is a safe bet, at least on that 1-2 range.
Yeah, and 2022 is a very comparable class if you really think about it, because you're like Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, George Pickens. Those are the caliber of receiver prospects that Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins are. So if you took James Cook over some of those players, maybe worked out for you to some degree, because James Cook is probably worth about the same as those guys now. But for the first year or two of their careers, Chris Olave was worth way more. Jameson Williams probably worth more. George Pickens probably worth more. So that's kind of the tight roping that we got to go. As far as other second rounders that surprised me a little bit, I'm not there with Trey Harris over Jaden Higgins, especially. If you want to take Trey Harris over Jack Besh or Kyle Williams, even though I have him ranked after those guys, I think that's totally cool. In my wide receivers to target and avoid video last night, I did talk about how Trey Harris ranked higher than even Matthew Golden in the prospect model, but definitely than Jack Besh and Kyle Williams. So I do think the earliest I'd be comfortable taking him is about the 205 to 207 range. I have seen some people rank him 201, 202, 203, and I think that's a little too early. A run-heavy offense with Justin Herbert is great, good quarterback and whatnot, but Ladd McConkey's going to take away a good amount of targets. They invested in a first-round running back. I just don't see the big-time ceiling year 1 to 2 for Trey Harris.
Yeah, and people that are pro Harris are going to point to the fact that, okay, you're tethered to Justin Herbert in the long term. By the way, I'll make my pick in a second as well. You are tethered to Justin Herbert in the long term. I think that is a pro of the situation. However, like you said, weeks 1 to 6, the Chargers were 31st in pass rate over expectation. You take a first-round hammer running back. I think the Chargers do want to run the football. It's just they didn't really have the personnel, especially when J.K. Dobbins wore down last year, to be able to do that down the stretch. I think with Amari Hampton in, like you said, a little bit of hurdles in terms of immediate playing time with guys like Mike Williams, guys like, Quentin Johnson may be in his way early on. I could make the pick. It's fine.
Okay. Just making sure you didn't get auto.
No. You're good. You're good. Sorry. I just wanted to make the point first, but regardless, I think there's hurdles to playing time. I think 31st in pass rate over expectation the first 6 weeks is telling. And I think the first round caliber running back with Amari and Hampton is going to be telling as well. But my pick, Kyle Williams, pretty simple. I believe in Drake May. He's got an immediate path to potentially even be the number 2 wide receiver on this team. And I do think he's a 3-level threat. A guy that we both thought was a top 10 level wide receiver in this class goes 69 overall to the Patriots. And I already know you got sniped on Jalen Milroe based on that reaction. I didn't even have to look at the board.
Of course, yeah. My tier of players, my cluster of these are the classic mid-second round guys. And to me, that's Tootin of the Jaguars, Milrow, who just went off the board, Scattaboo, who went off the board a little bit earlier, and then Kyle Williams, Jack Best, Trey Harris, the three guys that got day two capital and have pretty good projections in front of them. Once those guys are off the board, I think the conversation point becomes, do you want to take a Mason Taylor or Terrence Ferguson? If you need a tight end, I think this is probably about the earliest I can pull the trigger on guys like that. Or do you want to dive into maybe some of the running backs, a Dylan Sampson? You could convince me of that. A Elikayo Manor, even though he was a 4th round pick, to me is as good of a prospect or even better than Besh, Harris, and Kyle Williams were. And he also has opportunity in front of him, offense with just Calvin Ridley, basically, although they did pick up Xavier Restrepo undrafted. Or you could convince me on like Knoll, if you're a big Jalen Knoll guy, somebody like that. I actually have Elikayo Manor ranked this high. I know he's a 4th round pick, and taking him over 2nd round tight ends may be a little bit taboo, but if you do have no tight end need on your roster, because hypothetically I would have a roster that I'm working with here, I'm okay going with Elikayo Manor as high as the 2-3 turn there. So I went with him, love the prospect, and I do love the landing spot. He can play big slot for Cam Ward, be a reliable guy for him.
Little bit rich for my blood. Again, I just think the 42nd overall Mason Taylor, the 3rd round capital Jalen Knoll probably would
very
have
reasonable
to be the picks for me
against it.
But after that range, honestly, once you get to, I mean, Blues off the board, but even I have Jarquez Hunter at the beginning of the 3rd, DJ Giddens, Devin Neal obviously goes off the board here, Terrence Ferguson, Jalen Royals, Elikayo Manor. I think it's a pretty flat area. It just, for me personally, I would need to take Mason Taylor and Jalen Knoll off the board before I get to Elic. As much as I love Elic for what it's worth, I literally had him higher than you pre-draft.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest loser of rookie drafts in terms of, what pick number don't you want to have? The answer is 2-3 turn picks. Because there is not a major difference.
It's so flat.
It's so flat. And not only that, but like the players I have ranked there, Elikayo Manor, the tight ends, like even like DJ Giddens, Jalen Knoll, Jalen Royals, Devin Neal, there's going to be leagues where those players are available at the 3-4 turn. Like, depending on what your league mates value, maybe some people are going to take Shadur, Tyler Shuck, we just saw go off the board. It's going to all depend on team need at that point. So if you wanted to get Elikayo Manor, let's say at 309, it's possible you might get him there. You might not have to take him at the 212. And that's kind of what the case was last year, if you recall, with like Jalen McMillan. I had a lot of Jalen McMillan in rookie drafts because I had him ranked at like 301, but there was leagues I got him like borderline in the 4th round.
Yeah, and same thing. I mean, we look at all the running back profiles last year as well. The Tyrone Tracy's, the Bucky Irvings. Man, if with the hindsight that we have now, if I could just go back to every 3rd and 4th round of last year's class, some of my dynasty teams would be untouchable.
Yeah, I mean, I did draft an absolutely exorbitant amount of Tyrone Tracy, so I have him everywhere, but I did not draft an exorbitant amount of Bucky Irving, unfortunately. I was taking mainly receivers, actually, in that area. I was taking a lot of Jalen McMillan over Bucky Irving, which, again, didn't totally flatline my teams, but I wish I would have taken more Bucky Irving as well. Early in the 3rd round, again, we pretty expected Devin Neal. I think maybe a smidge early for Devin Neal. I definitely wouldn't be taking a 6th round running back over the tight ends. Definitely not over Sampson, too, just among the running back position. And I would actually prefer DJ Giddens as well, given the long-term projected potential there as maybe being the starter for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, lots of touches under his belt, been dealing with injuries the last couple of years. What do you think of the quarterbacks in this area? How high would you be willing to take? Shadur obviously has good opportunity in front of him in Cleveland and should have gone higher than the 5th round draft capital that he had. And then Tyler Shuck actually got the draft capital and has decent opportunity too.
So they're currently my tentative 33 and 34 overall. I think if you can make the case that you're a rebuilding team and you want to play the value accrual card, I think early to mid 3rd, like kind of where they went here, is probably the high end of where I can see these guys. Ultimately, though, when it comes down for me with Tyler Shuck specifically, I had a Davis Mills level analysis on them. I didn't think he was a very good prospect. He was my quarterback 6 in the class. Does go 40 overall, does have immediate opportunity to potentially start with Derek Carr on the men, but again, the upside here is maybe in a year time you can trade him for a mid to late 2nd. I just don't really see much appeal. With Shadur Sanders, I was much higher on the prospect, but again, 5th round capital, 2nd quarterback selected in the class. I think 2nd quarterback selected in the class was actually more of a formality. They picked Gabriel. They ended up taking Shadur later on. I honestly think the Shadur pick for the most part actually came from management more than anything. This might be a galaxy.
Like they didn't want to pick him. Stefanski and Andrew Berry didn't look like they wanted him.
Like maybe this is a galaxy brain take, but like, do you think they reached on Dylan Gabriel to dissuade management from taking Shadur?
I mean, that is kind of galaxy brain. I will say they probably did. The coach and the GM probably preferred Gabriel straight up. I would say that's probably accurate.
Maybe. Yeah, no, that could definitely be the case. Or at least maybe when they baked in Shadur's attitude and they said, hey, maybe this guy's going to be a backup quarterback at the next level. And we don't want a backup quarterback with this type of personality and this type of arrogance, maybe is like how they were going about it. Because, I mean, Dylan Gabriel, maybe not a very good, very talented quarterback. He's the type of quarterback you want as your backup because he brings a lot of intangibles.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's 2 picks on the board I just frankly don't agree with. Will Howard being this high of a pick. I get that right now they don't have any real quarterback long-term plan on the roster. I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to get signed at some point. I do think Mason Rudolph would be the backup in that situation. And Will Howard, as much as, he was like a kind of decent prospect, like I compared him to like a really, really watered down version of Brock Purdy who can be kind of a distributor for you. I think 6th round draft capital is not really somebody I want to be taking at the quarterback position in the mid 3rd round like that.
He's interesting. Again, my comp was like a Nick Foles. Nick Foles, people will think, statue quarterback, but actually in 2013, when he was the starter for the Eagles, he had a few decent rushing yards that season. So Will Howard, again, 6th round capital, like you said, I think they're going to bring in Rodgers. I think you're just getting a high character backup in that situation, which from an NFL perspective, you don't mind, but again, is he really going to get the opportunity to start? I have my concerns.
Not going to stop you. Not going to stop you from investing in the position next year, for example.
Exactly. So I'll keep the rainbow theme of my draft on display here. I ended up getting yellow in the 1st round, tight end with Loveland. I ended up getting blue with the wide receiver pick with Kyle Williams in the 2nd. Now I will lean towards green with a guy that we actually quite disagree with in our rankings, but I absolutely love the fit for Jarquez Hunter, being that elusive back, guy that reminded me of Jalen Warren, pairing up with that Sean McVay outside zone.
Yeah, I just frankly didn't like him much as a prospect. I thought he was a pretty average, like bottom of the roster kind of running back prospect, which is why I don't really think the landing spot is anything more than him being the 3rd running back behind Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. And I think if, let's say, Kyren Williams hit free agency next year or held out or something, and it was Blake Corum as the main back there, I think they would probably want to invest in the position again, and both of them would probably not be in great position. So that would be my thought on the Rams backfield a little bit. I'm a little surprised they didn't take, a different running back, because I think they had the opportunity to draft Dylan Sampson, didn't they?
Yeah, they had the opportunity in the 4th round. Again, what it comes down to me, they actually took Hunter over Sampson, right?
Yeah, they did. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like Sampson would have made a much better fit, and I just think he was a significantly better prospect.
Yeah, I definitely would have preferred Sampson. Regardless, though, I like the prospect a lot better with Hunter. I thought the elusiveness, the ability in the open field, the creativity, the natural instincts in space were on display. And Corum and Kyren overlap a ton in terms of skill set. Jarquez Hunter brings a different skill set to the backfield. I think, honestly, that's what McVay was looking for in general. But Giddens was actually the one I had right after him on the board. I'd let you make the case, but a lot of upside with that Indianapolis Colts situation, especially considering the contract status of Jonathan Taylor long-term.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did not see Terrence Ferguson on the board. I would have taken Terrence Ferguson for sure, because he was actually in the tier with Io Manor and with Mason Taylor. So, rewind, I probably would have taken Terrence Ferguson there. But for what it's worth, Terrence Ferguson was my 26th overall player. DJ Giddens, my 27th overall player. So I think Giddens was a huge, huge value here. I adamantly disagree with taking Jarquez Hunter over him, because I can see a reasonable path for DJ Giddens to be the starting running back as soon as like mid-season next year. Jonathan Taylor's been dealing with a lot of ticky-tack injuries the last couple of years, and this is the last year of guaranteed money on his deal. It wouldn't shock me if DJ Giddens, who I had a top 10, 11 grade on at the running back position in this class, who I thought was worthy of being a 3rd round pick from a talent standpoint, if he can clean up some of the intangible parts of playing running back, anticipating holes, seeing the field a little bit better, those kind of things. He has the athleticism, he has the receiving traits, he had the production profile to be a legitimate starting running back. Like, it actually does remind me quite a bit of some of these 4th and 5th round guys that have become starters in years past. You think of a Bucky Irving, a Tyrone Tracy, a Chase Brown, guys like that, Kyren Williams, guys who can eventually take over the backfield as cheap day 3 running backs. Giddens strikes me as, wouldn't shock me if this time next year they're moving Jonathan Taylor to a contender because they're trying to rebuild around a young quarterback, and DJ Giddens is their starting running back. It would not shock me if that was the case. You'd be worried, obviously, that he'd get nuked in next year's class, but I think you'd take that at the 312, like the chance that he survives.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's a talented enough player, and I think he's got the opportunity, three down skill set to be able to develop. He was a guy that actually we both pointed as being raw right away. Well, guess what?
Mhm.
Jonathan Taylor's going to handle a big workload this year. You learn behind Taylor, obviously develop the nuance aspect of your game. He does have a ton of natural talent. I will make my final defense with Jarquez Hunter because you said you adamantly disagree. I'll point to the fact that Jarquez Hunter career numbers 6.3 yards per carry, fourth among the 31 running backs in this class. 0.31 missed tackles forced per attempt, top 5 in the class. Yards after contact per attempt, 3.96, fourth in the class. And breakaway 1 percentage in his career, 10.2%, second in this class. So the efficiency will point to it. And again, I trust McVay.
Yeah, I think trusting McVay is a good strategy for what it's worth. But I can point to some great metrics for Giddens too. And
For
Giddens
sure.
in
I
the
love Giddens
prospect
too.
model, Giddens is an RB2 upside caliber prospect, which rarely get to day 3. Like when they do, you should be hammering the draft button on them every single time usually, because the prospect model would indicate that there's not a huge difference in the caliber of prospect that Rashad White and Trey Benson were, who were obviously 3rd round running backs versus a 5th round running back, and the prospect that DJ Giddens is. So that's why I'm on board with that. At the beginning of the 4th round, Terrence Ferguson, excellent value. I mean, if he's going to fall that far in tight end premium, there's no reason to me to not reach, I guess, necessarily, but to take Mason Taylor at the 2-3 turn if you can get Terrence Ferguson in the 3rd, 4th round. And same goes for even potentially like Loveland and Warren. Like if you're on the board at 108, 109, and you're like, I really need a tight end, but you have a bunch of 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round picks, there's guys in this class, man. Mason Taylor got the draft capital. Terrence Ferguson got the draft capital. Elijah Royal got the draft capital, even if I'm a little bit lower on him. And Harold Fannin is the best prospect in this class, according to the tight end model. Obviously, a lot of that is because of production, but still, they might be thinking long-term with him too. David Njoku on a big contract. Maybe after this year, after next year, they want to move on from David Njoku. Harold Fannin, learning from David Njoku, is as perfect of a landing spot as you can draw up for him if you really think about it.
Yeah. But I'm back on the clock here. Again, Jarquez Hunter, Kyle Williams, and Colson Loveland, my first 3 picks. If I wanted to keep it a theme, I would take a bad quarterback just to get the rainbow going, but that's not what I'm going to be doing. I'm giving you guys an honest look here. It would be down to a few different options. Damian Martinez was my highest pre-draft, however, a little bit more of a clog situation in Seattle. Obviously, Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker working ahead. You can make the case for Brashard Smith, lands with the Chiefs. We've seen their utility with pass-catching running backs in the past, and we've seen their dissatisfaction with Pacheco this year. And we also got a guy like Ty Felton gets 3rd-round capital to the Vikings. Not enough immediate opportunity there. I think I'll lean Smith just because I trust the situation. I trust the pass catching utility for a team that has historically had a good hit rate at being able to get the best out of these type of backs.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are going to shit on this rookie class, rightfully so. You know, we got some bad landing spots, some bad capital for some of these players, but I have 2 top 36 players still on the board for me here at 412. So I feel pretty good about either Torrey Horton, who went 5th round to the Seattle Seahawks. I know for a fact he fell for medical reasons. I know that is why he fell. He should have gone on day 2, and the prospect model still really likes him as a potential option. And if you think about it, he can be the 3rd receiver there day 1. They don't have any receivers behind Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp often injured, a little bit older. I feel really good about Torrey Horton here, potentially as the best player available. And I also love Oronde Gadsden. I'm going to end up with a ton of Oronde Gadsden because he goes in the 5th round to the Los Angeles Chargers. Not a whole lot of tight end competition on that roster. And even when you think about it, yeah, they have Trey Harris, QJ, and of course, Ladd McConkey and Mike Williams. But I do think there's targets available in that offense, especially when the price tag is like the 4th round, late 4th round, maybe even priority UDFA pickup. It kind of reminds me of what I was doing with like Tucker Kraft when he came out of in Green Bay. People were going to let him fall to the 4th round or whatever. And I was like, honestly, man, good prospect, good upside. I'll take the swing on him. I'm going to roll with Horton here just because I do have him ranked higher. And I actually have him a tier ahead of where I have Gadsden. But the fact that we can go through 4 rounds of a rookie draft and I have my 36th overall player and Damian Martinez, my 41st overall player, still available on the board for post-draft pickups for undrafted free agency is pretty exciting about this class. There's going to be a lot of varied opinions in the 3rd and 4th round.
Yeah, I technically do also have Gadsden higher than Smith. So that was an oversight on my part when I was on the clock. However, they're close enough to the point where, if you're in a real rookie draft, you got Loveland. Maybe you have a guy like Jonnu Smith or Cade Otton or maybe like a solid tight end 2 here. So you would have needed a tight end to take like a Loveland to be your tight end 1, but you have a guy that you trust as a productive piece, don't mind just mixing the running back there. Because again, they're close enough to the point where I think that's a fine point.
Well, not to mention, I think Gadsden will go undrafted in a lot of leagues too. You might just have not drafted him for the sake of picking him up in undrafted free agency as well.
That's
Like there's going to be strategy around this because, like, for example, my top available players that did not get drafted here, Damian Martinez, like I said, I don't believe he went off the board. He's just a good player, man. Like, I know he went 7th round and Kenneth Walker's there and Zach Charbonnet's there, but Kenneth Walker's a free agent after this year. Maybe Damian Martinez is the new Charbonnet. Charbonnet's the starter next year, and Damian Martinez rolls into the Charbonnet role, and Charbonnet's a free agent after next year. So who knows? Maybe Damian Martinez gets an opportunity to play.
Question for you. Where would Damian Martinez have gone if he had been selected with the Cowboys 7th round pick?
I would take him legitimately in the mid to late 2nd round.
Like that goes to show you, like, again, this was a top 10 level back for both of us in this class. It's funny enough that your comp for him was quite literally Chris Carson. Did he not go 7th round to the Seahawks?
100% he did.
So we might get a Chris Carson 2.0 situation on our hands because Martinez is quite good at football. And yeah, maybe this means they trade Walker. Maybe this means that they trade Charbonnet. Like, there's still the possibility that Martinez just impresses the coaches in the training camp. So I don't want to completely rule him out.
Yeah, and I also, maybe this is why I'm a little bit lower on Trey Harris too, because why draft Trey Harris at like 204 or wherever he went when I could take upside swings as an undrafted free agent on Gadsden and Keandre Lambert-Smith. That, like, both of those guys to me as free options, they could maybe work into a role in the Los Angeles Chargers offense. And again, one of my favorite, probably this year's Jalen Coker, if I had to say one, is Xavier Restrepo, because he went undrafted because he ran slow. He was a 3rd or a 4th round talent. He should have went in the 3rd or 4th round, and he ran slow at his pro day, and he goes back to Cam Ward in Tennessee to potentially play the slot there. Again, I know Io Manor is a big target of mine too. Between those two guys, I'm going to have a lot of exposure to that Tennessee Titans passing game.
So to give the viewers that are watching this kind of a recap, let's go through this draft, maybe talk about some of the most pointing picks, maybe some that we would disagree with, or for the most part, if the sentiment is, okay, this is basically a typical rookie board that we expect in a lot of our leagues, just kind of give the context here. So, I mean, Jeanty 101, it's going to happen literally in every league. I'm not shocked there. Travis Hunter 102, he is the rightful 102. I'm sure you'll make the case in a second as well, but people might be asking, well, 102, should we, if he's there at 106, then I need to take him, right? Yes, absolutely. If he is there at any one of your picks, 1 or 2 or later, in my opinion, he needs to be the slam dunk pick, because personally in my own rankings, I actually have 101 and 102 in the same tier.
I'm okay personally if people want to get cute at 102 and try and trade down to 104, 105 if you really do think he's going to be there, because there is enough risk on Travis Hunter to the point that if you really wanted to try and get cute and your fallback plan is I will just take Tet McMillan and whatever draft capital I get if he doesn't fall to me, I'm okay doing it because most of the market is going to have Hampton at 102. Yeah,
and I think that's very reasonable. Again, if you don't have to take him at 102 and you can trade down, get an asset, and still get him 104, 105, 106, be my guest. In the leagues that we play in, that simply will not be a scenario that I can be able to do. Yeah.
Right. But, and here's the other thing too, because I know that in some leagues I might be able to get him 103, 104, 105, I may mix in Hampton at 102 just for that reason as well.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable as well.
We're also in 15 leagues, so we can diversify a little bit. If you're only in one Dynasty league and you had to take him 102, I would.
Yeah, for sure. But as we go here, 103 to 105, 106, like very, very standard first 6 picks in this draft. Like we mentioned, when he got selected, Warren at 107. Yeah, I personally would have preferred a guy like Igbuka, but at the same time, in a tight end premium, I think him to Loveland and those two players sandwiched between those two tight ends, I personally view as a tier. Dart 111. If you need a quarterback, I understand it. A little rich for my blood, given my own analysis. He's my quarterback 4 in the class. I still have a little bit of concerns with the Giants situation. But what are your thoughts in terms of maybe the 111 to, we'll say the 203 range is kind of the tier?
Really quick, I do want to just point out one thing, because I think the Dynasty community was all in consensus that this quarterback class was not good. And then Cam Ward, who was projected to go first overall to the Titans for months now, goes first overall to the Titans. I have seen some people comment in our comments saying, hey, he should be like the 102 or the 103 or the 104. Frankly, I cannot take Cam Ward, who is, let's face it, a pretty below average first overall pick quarterback prospect, over 2 top 12 Dynasty wide receivers. I have Hunter and McMillan both ranked as such, and 3 top 10 dynasty running backs. I have Jeanty RB3, Hampton RB6, and Henderson RB10. So for me, I would take all 5 of those players over Cam Ward, and he is my 106.
See, I would counter that. First of all, I do actually think you had Ward higher than me pre-draft. So
I
you
did.
lowered him then based on the running back landing spots, I'd assume?
Yeah, I mean, Henderson got top 40 capital to a young quarterback that I believe in an offense that needs a running back. McMillan went top 10. Hampton goes in the first round of the Chargers, and Hunter's playing wide receiver full-time, and Genty's Jeanty.
Yeah. Again, I'll make the pro Cam Ward case. I would agree with you. If people are saying he needs to go 102, 103, absolutely fucking not. That's not where I value him. I would value him personally as my 105. If somebody wanted to say, hey, I'll take him 104, I think that is the absolute ceiling for me. However, there is upside here. If he does have a good rookie season, we've seen people vault young quarterbacks. CJ Stroud famously quarterback 3 in Dynasty after his rookie season. Obviously, we saw how the market adjusted on Herbert. Daniels now is currently the 103 in startups. It's like if Cam Ward goes out there and he has a 20 plus 25 touchdown level season. And I would argue that his weapons core now is greatly improved this offseason. His offensive line should take another step up. Obviously, you have Bill Callahan running the offensive line, JC Latham potentially taking that next step up as a player. Like I can picture myself seeing Cam Ward having a very successful rookie season. And if I can picture myself seeing that, then the market is already valuing him accordingly. And if he were to do that, like I said, at worst, he'd be a mid-second round pick, if not higher.
I guess the only difference for me is that I would take Henderson 9 times out of 10 over him, unless I absolutely really needed a quarterback. They are in the same tier for me technically, so there's definitely instances in which I would take Cam Ward over him, but in 9 times out of 10, I would take Henderson over him. That's pretty much the only difference for me versus you.
Yeah, and that's reasonable. And again, maybe the context will matter. If you're 105 and you're a running back away from competing, yeah, go take Trevion Henderson. Perfectly fine. If you're at 105 and you're nowhere close to competing and a running back's not going to help you be able to do so this year, you may as well take the upside shot on the quarterback. That's kind of how I view it, why they're in the same tier for me.
The other thing I would probably do my due diligence on is that if I was going to take Cam Ward, let's say 105 or 106, I would maybe see what 105 or 106 gets me in terms of veteran quarterback as well, just because you mitigate all the risk that way. And I think you could probably very easily get a quarterback similarly valued to Cam Ward, like a Brock Purdy or a Baker Mayfield, or hell, even maybe a Trevor Lawrence. Might be tougher now that he's got Travis Hunter to throw to. If you can get a quarterback in that territory, I would personally prefer those quarterbacks to Cam Ward. So that would be the only other thing that I would probably do my due diligence on before I take Cam Ward with the 105, 106.
For sure. But like we were saying, Dart, Golden, Burden, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, typically going to be a tier.
With that. Any order.
Yeah, perfectly fine. Again, a little rich for Dart in my blood, but if you need a quarterback and you're at the 111, I think it's personally reasonable. Higgins falling a couple picks, pretty interesting. I can't take Harrison Scadaboo over Higgins, but he would personally be in that tier with the Harvey, the Johnson, the Burden at the end of it, of course. But
yeah, and Golden, I actually do have a tier ahead of all of those guys, with Loveland and Warren in the same tier. So for me, Golden should have been the 111 or the 110 where you were picking, depending on your need for a tight end there. So for me, Golden is the one guy that looked to be a value in this draft. And then, like you said, I have Higgins over Harvey, or like at least in the same tier as Harvey, Caleb Johnson, Luther Burden, and Dart. So he should have been off the board before Trey Harris and Scadaboo. But I do have Trey Harris, Scadaboo, Tootin, Besh, Kyle Williams, and Milrow as that next year. The one pick I really disagree with here is Jaden Blue. I don't think Jaden Blue should go this high.
Yeah, rich for my blood. I have Jaden Blue currently as, let me take a look. Jaden Blue's currently my 26th overall player. So I need him in the early third to feel comfortable. Again, he will have immediate opportunity. He will have obviously that pass catching value to this Cowboys team, a team that is really needing proven pass catchers, to be honest. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, outside of Jake Ferguson, a lot of unproven on the roster. I do think he can have a role right away. It's just how many carries can we realistically project him for? I think whether it's Javonte Williams, whether it's Phil Maffa, whether that they maybe make it Miles Sanders, they make a deal for a running back in the offs. Like Jaden Blue to me doesn't scream like a guy that can handle more than 7-8 carries in a game at this point.
I have him at 34, dude. If he's going to go this high, I'm not going to be getting any of them. And maybe people will be like, oh, didn't you do this with Bucky Irving last year? He couldn't handle a full workload, and then he ended up being a stud. I just think this is a dramatically different prospect. And I'm a Texas fan, so I'm biased.
He's a fine player. Like he's a
fine player, but I really do think his ceiling is just being a pass-catching specialist. And I think it's also possible that they could still bring in a J.K. Dobbins or another running back to muddy up this backfield.
I guess the question would be would you feel confident taking Jerick McKinnon in the second round of your rookie drafts? And I think the majority answer would be no.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Jaden Blue is a good player and he has opportunity, but they might not be done at this position. If they went and throw some money or some draft capital at Travis Etienne or Breece Hall, or maybe throw some money at J.K. Dobbins, like the worst case scenario here is that they trade for Breece Hall or Travis Etienne, which to me is
Yeah.
not out of the range of outcomes.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I think that is a very reasonable outcome to happen, especially given the fact that there were literally rumors in the draft that they were interested in Breece Hall. Just the deal ended up not materializing. So, agree with you on Blue. I guess the inverse of that would be, who's your favorite value pick of this draft? Because for me, getting Jalen Noel at the 3-6, I think, is a very nice value here. Obviously, it's funny because Flett actually takes both Iowa State, Houston Texans wide receivers in this draft, getting Higgins at the 2-6. Again, I think that's also a very good value. But Jalen Noel specifically at the 3-6, you're getting a day 2 capital wide receiver with legitimate vertical chops. Yeah, year one, a little bit murky of a projection because we do expect Christian Kirk to fill that role. But Jalen Noel, I literally had comp to Christian Kirk, and it wouldn't be at all shocking to me if he took over that role completely come year 2.
Yeah, this is about where I have him ranked. So I wouldn't say it's a huge value in my rankings, but it's still a value technically because I have him ranked at 28, which would be the 304, I believe. So I do technically have him as a little bit of a value. My favorite value in the third round is the 2 final picks of the third round. I think DJ Giddens and Taj Brooks have actual opportunity in front of them. So that's who I went with. That's why I really like DJ Giddens as the projection. I kind of detailed that already. And then like I said, with the third round, I think I'm not a big Elijah Arroyo fan, but I do like the second round capital to the Seahawks. Will Howard to me was a bit of a reach. Love the value of Dylan Sampson at the 3-4. I think I have him ranked at the 301 or 302. So I think that's a really good value. And same goes for Mason Taylor. I think Mason Taylor should have either been my pick or the 301. So the fact that he went off the board 303 is pretty solid.
That's a good point, by the way. I guess technically by my valuation, Sampson would be my highest because he got him 304. Would that be 28th overall? And this is a guy that I have ranked 22nd. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Sampson because that's probably one that I just skimmed over.
Yeah, and then in the fourth round, Terrence Ferguson is insanely good value at 401. He is now he is ranked as my 302. So the fact that he is off the board there 301 or 401, sorry, is really good value. I think people are really going to overlook Harold Fannin because of David Njoku's presence, but I actually do think that the Browns potentially made that selection because they want to move on from David Njoku after this year, personally, because he's a very similar projection, very similar prospect to David Njoku.
I disagree.
Top 85 pick for a guy who is literally the best tight end in the model, including the fact that Loveland and Warren got first round capital and he got third round capital, to me speaks a bit of volumes there.
I get it, but I disagree. Njoku can play wide tight end, and Harold Fannin simply cannot. I think this is just simply to get their Isaiah Likely. They're seeing the success in Baltimore. Mark Andrews obviously being that wide tight end. I think he's going to have utility. I don't disagree with the analysis. I just don't agree with the fact that they're going to trade David Njoku because David Njoku might very well be their number one target on that team right now.
He might. And it's not really any disrespect to David Njoku. I just think he makes a lot of money. It's possible this is a future-oriented pick. Harold Fannin realistically needs probably 2 years to develop anyway. So if we do get the Isaiah Likely career trajectory, which right now we're seeing Isaiah Likely basically materialize as potentially the Ravens see Mark Andrews as expendable, I do think it's possible that that's what Harold Fannin's career looks like.
Yeah, potentially. We'll see when that ends up materializing. Either way, though, maybe whether it's in 2026 they fix their quarterback situation or whether it's with Shadur Sanders, banking an extra 2026 first, still getting a very, very high quality player with Mason Graham and being able to really fill out that roster, getting Shadur in the 5th round. Obviously, those 2 high utility second round picks that they were able to get with the Jaguars picking their own. I mean, the Browns are building quite a little piece down there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Hunter would have ultimately been better than all of those players, but getting Judkins out of that trade and also getting Mason Graham and a future first to potentially get a quarterback definitely, I think, makes a lot of sense there. I think we kind of went in depth on the 4th round for the most part already and talked about some UDFAs. Like I said, Gadsden would be high on my list. I like Xavier Restrepo in a lot of leagues. We'll do full videos on UDFA pickups and sleepers and all that kind of stuff. So we'll have that stuff covered. But wanted to keep this video digestible for you guys. If you do want all of our rookie rankings, we made a lot of reference to them throughout this video. Head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. You'll get up to you'll get 30% off any of the packages, 7 days for free. You also can get a free team review voucher from us to break down your team. We have a couple reviews in the hopper right now. So probably tomorrow or the next day, we're going to break down some Dynasty Decisions episodes, either live or we'll do it pre-recorded like we normally do. But we're getting enough reviews to the point that we might actually just do it live. And then you guys can chime in the comments if you want to talk about the team and all that kind of stuff. So it should be a lot of fun. Team reviews, again, you get those for free if you sign up annually, plus our draft guide, version 3.0 post-draft is now out. And we also have the prospects tab undergoing a major update. I believe that should be out by the time you guys are listening to this. You can tinker with the prospects and see exactly how good all of the wide receivers, running backs, and very soon the tight ends are in this class. So with that being said, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Peace out. We'll talk to you soon.